Good morning, everybody. So good to see you all. I want to let you guys know how much I love coming on here early and being able to see everybody's face this morning. I miss seeing people, so it's good to see you all. Thank you for being here again.
Up to 5.
What's up? Somebody wants to probably mute themselves on there. That'd be great. And then, or if our host, I think, Cindy, you're hosting, maybe if you want to mute, make sure everybody's muted, that'd be great. And we'll go ahead and get going. Again, thank you all for being here. So glad you're here with us today as we just continue to share resources, update you on things that are going on with our agency and across the state, and answer any questions that you might have about what's happening in education in our programs and in other places. So I want to remind you before we get started that we do have a chat feature over on the side there that you guys can put questions into if you have particular questions about what's going on and different things that are happening, or if there are topics that you want to discuss and get feedback from other folks in programs across the state. This would be a good opportunity for that as well. Again, I just want to thank everybody for being here. We have a couple of announcements before we'll open up the floor to everybody, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page about things that are happening. We are in our final stages of putting together our memorandum of agreements for next year. In fact, Christine Smith, who is our finance person in our office, will be sending out MOAs to school districts tomorrow on May 1st. So districts will be receiving those tomorrow, and that's for the next school year. So those of you who are administrators out there, keep your eyes open for those. They'll be coming to you, to your finance person, to your superintendent, and those will have the contract for next year, the memorandum of agreement, as well as the allocation for next year. And so I also want to let you know that we've been working on that, and Christine has done a great job of getting that together. And the per child rate for next year will be $4,146 per child. I know some of you are grabbing pens and probably writing that down, but I said it's $4,146 per child for next year. That's an increase of $203 per child over what was allocated this current year that we're in. So we're really excited that we were able to do that. We reduced our internal administrative budget, obviously, as much as we could, so we can redistribute those funds back out to school districts. Those of you who are school administrators and others, you already know your average ADM for the past year. We sent those out in early April as part of the process for appealing any of those numbers, and several of you did. But so you have your average daily membership from us, and so what you can do is then take that per child rate, multiply that out by your ADM, and you'll have your allocation for next year. You'll also be getting that tomorrow, but just I know some of you are probably like me, and as soon as you hear a number, you probably want to start trying to calculate what that is. So I don't have it for each individual district, but you certainly could do your own projection based on that. So again, the per child rate for next year, $4,146 per child. That's an increase of $203 per child over the allocated amount for this year. So that's kind of where we are. Does anybody have any questions about that or anything around that? You'll see over in your comment section, in your chat section, Cindy just put in there, and so that you guys have that as well, in case you missed it. Again, I want to share with you all that we talked about this last week, and I think you guys are probably as aware of this as we are, but we know that there's a significant economic downturn currently in the state and the country and the world, really, if we're looking at a global community. And we know that that means that there may be in the next fiscal year some economic impacts to our programs and to every program across the state in every single area. So we have tried to prepare for that as best we can. And I shared with you last week that we put aside about 4.5% of our overall allocation from the General Assembly in a rainy day fund that we did not allocate out to any districts and that we did not use administratively. So those funds are sitting in a separate account that we will, if there is at any point during the next fiscal year, if there is a budget reduction at the state level, those resources would be tapped first. That's where we would go to first to address any budget reduction that we would have in the next fiscal year. And then obviously we would go to our administrative operation next, and then our last option would always be to go to districts. So we put that aside so we would never have to get to option 3, which is districts. And so we're doing our best to make sure that we are prepared to be able to do that. So just be aware going into the fiscal year that we have set aside a contingency fund in case there is a budget reduction. And we want to make sure that that we're respectful of the allocations that go out to districts, and that we're doing our best to make sure that we never have to go back to a school district to request funding back from them. So that's where we are. As always, if a miracle happens between now and the end of next fiscal year and we do not get a budget reduction at all, then those funds, that 4.5% that we set to the side, will be reallocated back out to our programs. So all of that will be redistributed back out either through a mini grant process or through an increased per child rate at the end of next fiscal year. So that's where that is. We're just trying our best to make sure that we're good stewards of state resources and that we are respecting our districts and the services that they provide. So that's kind of where we are. If you have any questions about anything related to those budget items or kind of our planning and where we are, we'd be happy to try to address those as well. A couple of other things that I just want to draw your attention to before we open it up. And again, I'd encourage you that if you have questions, you can go ahead and start putting those over into the chat section over on we've got a chat feature. So if you have questions, drop those in there as we're going through here, and we'd be happy to try to address any of those questions that you have, or call on our other programs across the state to help us kind of address those. I told you last week, and we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, that we've entered into a partnership with the Green River Regional Education Cooperative to provide professional development training for our teachers and administrators that is specifically focused on alternative education settings and on best practices in alternative education. And we have scheduled a PD for June 8th and with GREC, and it will feature our keynote speaker, who is Jennifer Gonzalez, who is with the Cult of Pedagogy. And she also is the author of the book, Hacking Education. So we are moving forward with that. And I wanted to let you all know that that program has been moved from an in-person professional development training to a virtual professional development training, and we'll be sending notification and registration out to you soon. We hope that you'll be able to join us for that. It will be an online training. Greg is hosting it and will be coordinating it. There will be a keynote speaker, Jennifer Gonzalez, as well as breakout featured sessions throughout the day. And so they'll be coordinating all of that stuff, and we're really excited about that. In addition, we're offering a free copy of her book, Hacking Education, to everybody who registers for that event. And so you'll be able to register online. We'll send you that book prior to the event, and you'll be able to have that before the PD event on June 8th. So that's kind of where we are with that. We hope that you guys will participate with us. And that also brings us to our next biggest event, which is our Kentucky Alternative Education Summit, which is scheduled currently for July 21st and 22nd at Embassy Suites in Lexington. We just received notification last night that the Kentucky Department of Education has canceled all of their in-person trainings in July. So they've even gone out. We thought June for sure. We were looking at July. They have canceled their July meetings now, which included the Persistence to Graduation Summit, which was scheduled about 2 weeks prior to our summit. And so we were feeling pretty good that if they were going to have theirs, we knew we could have ours, because theirs is about 800 to 1,000 people. But we received notification late yesterday that they are not having in-person meetings for that, and that they will explore virtual options, which quite frankly puts us in a position now of having to make a decision about our conference, our summit this summer, and how we're going to move forward with that. We are not yet at a stage where we're going to make that decision, but we are entering into conversations about what that could look like and what it may look like in July for us. So again, this is somewhere that we haven't been. It's a decision we certainly did not want to have to be in a position to make. I don't think anybody wants to be the first group who pulls together 400 people into a conference room and that it's on their shoulders. So we are trying to make that decision about, is late July late enough for a gathering like that? What are the recommendations from the Department of Public Health? What are recommendations from the governor's office at that point? We know that yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the governor released some recommendations for opening back up the state. And so part of that moved to May 25th, that you could have gatherings of people up to 10 people. So that's May 25th, up to 10 people. Certainly we're looking at 350 to 400 people. So that's quite a different scenario for us. And we don't yet have guidance about what that'll look like in July. However, we have to make some pretty serious decisions about that relatively soon because of contracting, space obligations, and a lot of other things that are happening. So we just want to let you all know that KDE has moved in that direction. We're going to be meeting and talking with them about what options they're exploring now in developing their Persistence to Graduation Summit and what that'll look like. And then hopefully that will inform our decision-making process about where we move forward with the Kentucky Alternative Education Summit scheduled for the end of July. So that's kind of where we are with that, and we will keep you posted, obviously. The other thing related to professional development, this past Tuesday, we kicked off our online PLC meeting with Hassan Davis, with the author of Written Off and former Commissioner of Juvenile Justice. I think we had a great turnout for that. We had a great first meeting, and that'll continue. So I want to thank all of you who are on here who were also involved in that PLC. I think it was a great start to a new process and a new way of us connecting back with you and providing you with the resources you need to be more effective in your schools. So thank you for all of that. And then one other thing I'll mention before we go into some of the other conversations. KDE yesterday had a webinar that they presented on for teachers specifically on how to prepare for moving back into educational services in the fall and what that will look like. They answered a lot of questions that folks had about preparing, about addressing gaps that are developing currently. We know that there are gaps developing currently. Again, these are things that you all in our programs have been dealing with for a very long time. And when we have students at every single level of education at every single age, we have 17-year-olds who are, reading at a third grade level. I mean, that's not anything new for you guys. and how to address that. But I think it certainly is something that traditional educators maybe are not as familiar with. And so it was a good session for them. And I think it also be beneficial for us. So we're going to share that out later today with you, a link for that. So you all will have that to be able to go back and watch that webinar. And it'll give you some good insights into moving forward into the next year. So those are kind of where we are and what's going on with us currently. If you guys have questions, I'm seeing some questions over in the side, so I'm going to try to address those and then open it up for discussion around that. But again, if you have additional things you want to talk about, please, this is your opportunity. And that's why we get together, is so that you guys can meet with each other. More important for you to hear from each other than it is to hear from me. So we encourage you to do that. Ellen Hoffman asked, is anyone planning next year for a staggered schedule? And if so, what does that look like? Is it a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, alternating Friday schedule, or half and half day schedule? Is anyone else starting having those discussions about their programs? And I'll let you think about that. And Ellen, I know that this question is coming from some of the recommendations that we've seen nationally, where some folks are recommending that school could look very differently and very different in the fall, with some students coming on some days and other students coming on other days, and recommendations about spacing within classrooms. That's recommendations that student desks should be 6 feet apart from each other, that there should be social distancing within the schools. And then other folks saying, well, how do you do that when you have such large numbers of students in your classrooms in small spaces? And so some of the recommendations of how to do that social distancing that's coming out are conversations around having alternating schedules for students, that some students are in your classrooms at certain times and others are in your classrooms at other times. There's a lot of issues around that. For example, transportation. You may be able to do that in your classroom, but for those of you who have students who are transported, how do you do that on a bus? What does that look like when you're picking up students? Who's monitoring that, and how does that work? I think there are a lot of questions about that, but certainly it is a conversation that folks are having. And I'm interested, like Ellen, to see if anybody else out there have had those conversations in your district, if you're having those conversations, and what that looks like. Ellen, if you're still on here, you may also want to talk about what your district is doing. Have you had those conversations at your district? What's that looking like? Ellen's in a day treatment program, a DJJ day treatment program, so it's not a residential thing. So there may be some conversations that are happening differently depending on the type of programs that you're in.
Yeah, Ronnie, our superintendent, who has recently been quoted in the Lexington Herald on discussion of what next year is going to look like, has already told us to kind of give scenarios of what we expect next year. He's, and ours is not, our programs are not as difficult as looking at a high school with 1,600 kids. And what does that look like? So there are having discussions on, juniors and seniors coming one day, freshmen, sophomore, and doing alternating that way. You have a lot of issues that are going on. Elementary school had the problem with who's providing childcare on alternating days. That's another big concern. So our superintendent has kind of given us the directive to kind of plan on what would that look like in your building. And then also those protocols that, do we take temperatures when kids come in off the bus every day? And do we have it in, and there was an article a teacher sent me recently put out from the feds on, do we do temperature taping? Do you have a place adequate to do quarantine in your building until somebody can come and pick them up? it's the same thing that businesses, factories, and everybody else is looking at for next year. How do we deal with this? Because if the projection is that they won't have a vaccine until September or October, or even later than that, what are we going to do? I've told my teachers too, and I just want to put this out there. I have a Google certified teacher on my staff who also has been approved for ELA credit on doing Google Classroom. She can do Google Classroom. She can do any of the certified Google things that she can provide professional development, but she can do that on an online basis. It's more like a Zoom meeting. People participate. She goes through the requirements to qualify because as a Zoom certified or Google certified teacher, she has to provide professional development. That's part of her requirement as a Google certified teacher. But anyway, she's working with my staff to try to tell them how to set up their classrooms. We are also looking at what do we do with kids that don't have access to internet and what do we provide for them. So we're kind of looking at a scenario of maybe we are a blended program. We have alternative school kids and we have day treatment kids. So we are kind of looking at having the day treatment kids come on like Monday, Wednesday. The teacher does direct instruction and then gives them their assignment for the Tuesday and the Thursday days. They would be at home. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, my alternative school kids would be in attendance.
Thanks, Ellen. If anybody else is having similar conversations in your district, we'd love to hear from that.
Boss.
Oh. Almost. Okay. What I was going to say is that if you're not having those conversations, I think that Clark County, where Ellen is located, is a good model for starting those discussions, that we need to be having conversations around what next year will look like in your programs. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you will move to a point to where you say we want to have kids on alternating days, but there are a lot of other conversations that are taking place there that should be taking place at districts across the state, and especially at your level. And that are things like Ellen mentioned of what are your protocols in place? How are you addressing students who get sick during the day? How do you quarantine them? How do you check them for anything? I mean, you should be having those conversations as well.
Ronnie, I did want to mention too that I think that we're going to see a different direction that our courts are going. A lot of times when kids would be held in a detention center for violations of any kind of probation that they're on, immediately after this happened, third week of March, those detention centers had a directive to get those kids out of those facilities. So a lot of those kids were put on ankle monitors at home. So when they're on ankle monitors at home, they're put back onto my enrollment. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of like kids that are on home incarceration on an ankle monitor, but we're required to provide them educational services. So I think that's a whole big different play too, to where the judge says, no, you can't go back to school. I want you on home incarceration, but it'll be up to the school district to provide services for them. So I almost have to provide like a homebound teacher or somebody that has those kids on a roster, communicate with those kids daily on getting assignments in. Of course, we're lucky that we have Apex and our kids can do that from their phones. So that has been working for us. But a lot of those kids that would be in detention, I think and we go to the Fayette County Detention Center, those kids are pretty much evacuated. Unless you're a Fayette County kid, they sent you back to your home district on ankle monitors. So I think we're going to have a whole lot more kids on our district, on our enrollment, that I have to monitor, but they're at home and they're in a home incarceration with an ankle monitor on. So that's another issue in itself.
And Ellen, I think that's something that the residential DJJ programs are already seeing. When we talked last week about the enrollments in those programs and what they look like now, they are extremely low in those DJJ residential facilities. And that is because for the safety and security of the student themselves, as well as the staff of that facility and everyone else, getting that student into the least restrictive environment where they can still be successful, I think is the move that's happening. And so when we talked about ADA and we gave that option in Senate Bill 177 that they could use last year's enrollment numbers if they requested that, that's part of the reason, is because we know that a lot of these programs have a very low number of enrollments right now. I think last week, Shannon, Jed, or someone else on here maybe talked about that enrollments are currently in those programs at the lowest that they've been in recent memory. So that doesn't mean that things aren't still happening in the community, that there's not still things that are happening with students, that students aren't getting in trouble or doing things they shouldn't be doing. It just means that you're absolutely right, Ellen, in that the court system is responding differently to that now. And it does shift the responsibility back to their home school district, because the district where they reside still has responsibility for educational services, and that'll look a lot different than it maybe has looked in the past. So I don't want to lose, though, the importance, I think, of this conversation is that those districts that are not having this conversation yet about what protocols you should be putting in place, you should start having those conversations now with your district leadership and with your program staff. And that includes residential facilities, so that you all can have a plan developed in collaboration and in partnership with your treatment providers, whether that is the Department of Juvenile Justice or one of the private child care agencies, so that you have those conversations about what does that look like for us? How are we going to provide a safe, secure environment for not just for our students, but also for ourselves, and what that looks like. And so it's never too early to start having those conversations at the district level. So we encourage you to do that as well. I'm not seeing other comments over here related to that. Let's see, I'm trying to.
What's everybody doing for graduation?
There we go.
I was gonna say, I just posted a book in the group chat about graduation for our school, so it may take you a second, Ronnie. I'm sorry.
I saw that. I was looking for. I was trying to see if there was anything else related to kind of a school district changes. I didn't see anything else related to that. But Courtney, you want to go ahead and share what you're with the group, what you're doing related to graduation in your district?
Yeah, our school counselor just sent out an email last night. The plans that are being put into place is that they are, our school counselor and our school principal are going to go around to all of our graduates' houses. They're going to take pictures and videos of the students in caps and gowns, which we only have 3, so it's going to be pretty easy to do. We teachers are invited to go in our cars and be able to watch it as they do this. The visits will involve pictures and videos being taken of the students in their caps and gowns, and then balloons and gifts are going to be given out, as well as the diplomas. In addition to that, I have stepped forward to be able to edit together a video for our graduates. The teachers are going to send me video recordings of them wishing the graduates well and giving them a message of some sort, and then I will edit all that together, and it'll be ready for our graduation on May 27th.
Thanks, Courtney. That's in, those of you who don't know, Courtney's in Jefferson County as well. So that's one of the day treatments, Louisville day treatment there. So that's how they're responding to it. Other folks?
In Clark County, we graduate with GRC kids. So they have around 400. I have 21 graduates this year. So today they are picking up their cap and the gown at the high school. They have to stay in their car. Then they're brought out a piece of paper. We are scheduled for 8 to 9 o'clock on a Wednesday and Thursday morning time slots, kind of like you all are doing. They go to the auditorium at the high school. They're going to have great big, it'll look like a graduation setting. They walk across the stage. They'll get their diploma. They have people there taking pictures. They'll video all of that, which is around 400 kids. Then they'll have a editor that goes in and puts it all together as a video, and all of the kids will get that. Still had confusion again this year about my juniors, early graduates, and them understanding that in the statute they have to have an ACT, they have to reach the ACT benchmark before they can graduate early. I have a lot of kids in my program that get on Apex, and it's kind of a self-paced program. They can do it on the weekends, they can do it at night, and a lot of those kids as juniors because of jobs and other family things, get their 25 required credits for our district. But they cannot graduate as juniors unless they reach the ACT benchmark. So we moved those kids to July 1, 2020, and they graduate at that time, because that time now they're considered to be a senior and they don't have to follow those guidelines, and they're a hardship graduation is what we classify them. So a lot of my juniors were online saying that they weren't allowed to walk with the rest of the kids. So I had to contact them personally and say, please, for the love of God, get off social media saying we're not letting you graduate because you did not meet the legal high school graduate requirements, even though you have your 25 required credits. So that's kind of been hard because we haven't had those discussions with our kids since we've been out. And a lot of those juniors have been on Apex and have completed their work for juniors and the requirements. So they had to understand they will be able to walk with the 2021 class next year in May, just like the rest of those, but you have to be with your class and your 4 years in high school. So we had to clear that up. But all of our kids are going to be videotaped, and we've got our districts put together care packages. They all get gift bags and a lot of nice stuff. A lot of our kids probably will not come to the walking, their thing is they wanted to be on the field with all the hoopla and people, doing horns and all that craziness. So I don't know if they're going to come and walk across and shake my hand or not, but we'll see. They sign up today. So it takes 2 hours to get my kids because I do have 21 kids. So that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellen. Other folks?
Our district is doing something similar to what I think Courtney had discussed as
Hey
far
guys,
as.
Sorry, can you all tell your district when you introduce yourself? I don't know if everybody
Oh.
on the call knows everybody else.
Warren County Day Treatment. So we are working on a video presentation to be released on the night that the students were supposed to graduate in our 4 high schools in our alternative school system. And with day treatment, we are putting together a graduation video as well. We've already took pictures with the students in their cap and gown on the day that they actually finish their assignments. So that will be prepared and be ready for them to be released. And we also put signs in all of the students' yards who are seniors throughout the entire district, which includes our alternative schools.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. Other folks, how you all are addressing graduation? Okay. Not hearing any other conversation around that. Are there other issues that are going on that you all would like to talk about? Anything else that's happening or direction or just anything else you would like from other folks?
As we look at preparing our calendars for next year, are we just basically going on the assumption of what our school district is going to open regularly, right? So prepare our calendars for next year, and then if those need to be amended closer to time, we can do that.
Yeah, so some of the obviously the traditional school calendar is set by the district and lots of conversations around that. And so that's the traditional 177 days or the equivalent. In addition to that, there's 33 required extended days. And so those, we are at this point moving forward as though those start July 1. And then the district has the flexibility between July 1 of 2020 and June 30th of 2021 of scheduling those days and what they can look like. I have had several districts reach out to me and asked the question, is it okay to start with NTI instruction in July for those days? Do we have to do in-person instruction for those? And we've been very flexible in responding that if you start your days in July, that you can do those through NTI. We want to make sure that we're following the recommendations set forth by the governor about in-person instruction, set forth by the Department of Public Health. So if those guidelines are still in place on July 1, that we don't do that, then we are fine with moving forward with the NTI instruction starting in July. And each individual district gets to set those calendars and what they'll look like. I will note that one of our districts just contacted us. Their board voted to postpone the start of their traditional school calendar until August 26th in their district, which is pretty late in the school year. I think for most districts start much earlier than that. But they postponed theirs till August 26th. And what that provided for the KECSAC program in their district is that they can complete all of their extended days prior to the start of the regular school year. They can do all 33 extended days before traditional school even starts, which means when June or next June gets here, fall break, winter break, spring break, they won't have to go to school during those days because they all have already completed those extended day requirements. And so there's that flexibility at the local district level about how you do that and how you build those days in. And we're obviously offering as much flexibility as we can in how you deliver those moving forward. Any other questions from anybody about how things are going? All right, not hearing any. I want to thank everybody again for joining us this morning. We're going to do this again next week. I think at some point we'll probably phase these out, but I enjoy getting together with you guys and just having conversations every week. I think it's been really, really fun for me. I hope it has been for you all as well. I love getting to see all the different angles of your faces on these cameras from different angles I've never seen before. Some of you are going to have to take a lesson on where to place your camera. If you notice, I keep moving mine higher and higher every week so that my double chin gets smaller and smaller. So that's the goal. But we appreciate you all being here and spending time with us this morning. Thank you for joining us. We will see you all next week, Thursday at 10 a.m. We'll come back together and continue having these for just a little while until we move into what we think might be our new normal. So, but we appreciate you all being here. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions this week, please let us know and we can address those for the whole group next week. But we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody.